Welcome back to Poorly Educated Today in the News, where the planet keeps trying to file for bankruptcy. The government keeps trying to lose the paperwork, and somehow the people with the most power still act like they got hired 5 minutes ago off Facebook Marketplace. We have reached that special point in history where world peace lasts about as long as a gas station hot dog. Congress is getting juked by human resources, and the weather forecast sounds like Revelation, written by a utility company. So let's walk barefoot through this pile of Legos together, because apparently that is what citizenship is now. Segment 1. Ceasefire by Group Text. This week, the United States went from threatening Iran with civilizational ruin to announcing a 2-week ceasefire, and then immediately discovering nobody involved could agree on what the ceasefire even covered. Trump said the deal meant the Strait of Hormuz would reopen and uranium enrichment would stop. Iran said that part was nonsense. Pakistan said Lebanon was included. The White House said maybe not. And Israel responded by hitting Lebanon like they never got the calendar invite. That is not diplomacy. That is 6 cousins trying to split an inheritance in the Waffle House parking lot while somebody's truck is still running. Markets briefly celebrated like peace had broken out, which is adorable, because Wall Street will believe anything if you jingle a ceasefire in front of it, like keys in front of a baby. And while all that was happening, NATO chief Mark Rutte came to Washington basically to ask if America was done punching the furniture, only for Trump to keep griping that allies would not join his Iran adventure. That's like a guy getting mad the volunteer fire department would not help him burn down his neighbor's shed because he had a feeling there might be snakes in it. The global economy is now reacting to presidential mood swings like a horse spooked by a plastic bag, and the oil market keeps bouncing between panic and pretend optimism because one shipping lane can apparently determine whether half the planet buys groceries or just stares at them. We built a modern economy so efficient that a dispute in the Persian Gulf can slap a nurse in Ohio through the price of rubber gloves. And that right there is what happens when capitalism starts wiring its house with wet extension cords. Segment 2. Fire her, then hide behind her. Back here at home, the Justice Department is trying a legal argument so slippery it ought to come with a wet floor sign. Pam Bondi got subpoenaed over the Epstein files mess, then got fired, and now the argument is basically, well, she was subpoenaed as Attorney General, and since she isn't Attorney General anymore, poof, no testimony. That is the bureaucratic version of flipping the Monopoly board, because somebody asked where all the money went. They are acting like firing the manager means the security camera footage also evaporates, which would be news to every Dollar General in America. And the reason this smells worse than a bait cooler in August is because everybody already knows the file release was a mess, with lawmakers from both parties still demanding answers about delays, redactions, and victim protections. So now Congress is basically being told that if the executive branch wants to dodge oversight, all it has to do is swap nameplates fast enough and mumble something in legal Latin. Meanwhile, Justice Samuel Alito had a dehydration scare, and Washington instantly reacted the way it always does when a Supreme Court justice coughs in public, which is by turning into a room full of gamblers studying horse knees. That is our whole national temperament now. One wing of government is hiding testimony behind a technicality. Another wing is treating IV fluids like constitutional prophecy, and the rest of us are just trying to figure out whether laws are still real or merely decorative. Segment 3. EPA by Fossil-Fueled Ouija Board. Then we get to the environment, where EPA Chief Lee Zeldin went to a Heartland Institute conference and basically told climate skeptics to celebrate while his agency guts the old endangerment, finding that underpinned major federal climate rules. That is like hiring a raccoon to run the pantry, and then complimenting him for questioning the biased science around lids. At the exact same time, March just shattered heat records across the continental United States, with NOAA data showing a month so abnormally hot, it looked less like spring and more like the thermostat owed money to a loan shark. We are not even easing into catastrophe anymore. We are cannonballing into it while the referees argue carbon dioxide is just misunderstood. California is already getting whipped by spring wildfires, and Hawaii is juggling volcanic eruption threats, flood danger, and punishing surf all at once, which sounds less like a weather pattern and more like the island got selected for the deluxe disaster sampler platter. The rough part is the grounded truth under all the comedy. The systems meant to protect people are being hollowed out exactly when the danger is getting louder, faster, and harder to ignore. You cannot spend years treating science like a political inconvenience and then act shocked when the sky starts behaving like it has personal beef with your zip code. Folks love saying the climate always changes, and that is true. Same way your house always changes when it is on fire. Segment 4. The nerds built a cyber possum. In technology, Anthropic rolled out a preview of its Mythos model and then immediately acted like they had discovered a raccoon that could pick locks, forge checks, and crawl through the internet chewing power lines. Reports say the model found huge numbers of software flaws, including 0 days, and the company kept it out of full public release while handing controlled access to selected firms through Project Glasswing. That is not a product launch. That is a rich man whispering, "Do not let this thing out the barn unless you want the county fair electrified." Then OpenAI, in the most Silicon Valley sentence imaginable, responded by speeding up its own cyber-defensive tools and also publishing ideas about 4-day workweeks and broader prosperity sharing, because apparently even the builders are looking at the machine and going, "Buddy, this may eat jobs like a combine in a cornfield." That is the part that ought to make your neck itch. When the people inventing the future start floating shorter workweeks and bigger social cushions, that means they have looked under the hood and seen something with teeth. We were told technology would free humanity for leisure, but the American version always seems to translate into 3 billionaires getting richer while everybody else gets an email explaining they are now empowered to explore new opportunities. And just for seasoning, researchers are also warning that AI pretending to be a therapist keeps breaking ethical norms, which means we have now built a machine that can maybe hack the electrical grid, but still cannot be trusted to say, "Wow, that sounds really hard," without causing a problem. That is not superintelligence yet. That is a haunted customer service kiosk with ambition. Segment 5. Milk, Moonlight, and Ancient Trash Talk. If you needed a reminder that policy brutality is not abstract, there was the case of ICE detaining a DACA father while he was reportedly delivering breast milk to his premature daughter in the NICU. That is one of those stories where the official language will try to sand off the horror, but regular people hear it and immediately know something has gone rotten clear through the floorboards. The sales pitch is always about targeting the worst of the worst, and then somehow the machinery ends up ambushing a dad in a hospital while carrying food for his newborn. That is not law and order. That is state power wandering around the maternity wing with all the moral judgment of a parking boot. And because this century refuses to maintain a single emotional tone for more than 11 seconds, the same week also gave us Artemis 2 astronauts looping around the moon, setting a distance record, and witnessing a rare in-space solar eclipse, while Earth below kept acting like a busted muffler shop in a lightning storm. I love that contrast, because it feels like humanity in one snapshot. Down here we are dodging heat records, legal nonsense, military tantrums, and algorithmic creepiness. while up there 4 people are floating past the moon like, wow, the universe is beautiful. Then archaeologists found a 2,100-year-old sling bullet with an insult on it, which honestly may be the most comforting story of the week, because it proves that across empires, plagues, kings, republics, and apps, people have always been the same petty little goblins. In conclusion, whether it is nations lobbing missiles, politicians dodging subpoenas, tech firms building digital gremlins, or ancient soldiers writing mean notes on ammunition, the real constant in history is that humans will always mix genius, stupidity, cruelty, and comedy into one big stew, then call it civilization and ask why it tastes like this.